Now we would like to move to another part of the program, and it will be, the title is Confronting Genocide Denial in Cambodia, and we have 3 speakers, but I'm not going to present the speakers, and I kindly ask our moderator for the session moderators, Visal Sorn, who is from Battambang, from Cambodia. And Visal Sorn, she's working with, she's project officer for Forum Civil Peace Service International in Cambodia, and she's working on detect key people within rural communities and collect their personal narratives. And by critically reflecting on individual and collective stories, people are motivated to share their life histories within and outside their local communities. And the goal is to empower people and lend their voices to be heard, to increase multicultural understanding, and to help to prevent prejudices. And she worked as a research assistant and in Cambodia and in Bangladesh. And we are very proud to have Visal Sorn to be our moderator today, and she will present our 3 speakers now. So Visal, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Natalie, and it is my great honors, and I'm very happy to become a moderator today. So to repeat again,
I apologize, someone should unmute. Venerable Lavlu, please unmute. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And it is my great honors, and I'm very happy to become the moderator today. So to repeat again, the session today is to discuss about the confronting genocide denial in Cambodia with our wonderful 3 speakers. The aim of the session is to reflect on a numerous examples of the genocide denial and distortions in Cambodia, and identifying common challenging for genocide and Holocaust denial to find appropriate way to deal with it. We would like to invite participants to leave your comment and your question if you have any. And now, first, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Professor Rafal Pankowski. He was talking about the globalization of genocide denial and the case study of multi-centers. And Professor, if I pronounce your name incorrectly, I'm very apologize. And
it is perfect.
The floor is yours, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was very impressed by the phrase that Professor Yehuda Bauer used in his keynote speech just some minutes ago. Global culture of respect. Well, this is very much what we are hoping to contribute to through this project, and as we have stated repeatedly in the course of this symposium and the previous project meetings, we believe that by commemorating the Holocaust and other instances of genocide, we can contribute to intercultural understanding. But an important part of commemoration is confronting denial and distortion of the Holocaust and the other genocides. And what we have identified in the course of this research is the fact that some discursive strategies employed by the deniers, or those who wish to distort the history of genocides, they are actually quite similar in the case of Holocaust deniers, as well as in the case of deniers of other genocides, including the Cambodian genocide. And of course, when we see and we note some of those commonalities and analogies, this is not to say that all those cases are identical. Of course, the Holocaust as a tragic event has its specificity. Of course, the different cases of other genocides and crimes against humanity, they also have their specificities. and the strategies of denial are also specific, but those commonalities exist, and I think it is interesting and important to note them. Moreover, we have noted that in many cases the strategies of denial are employed vis-a-vis the Holocaust and the Cambodian genocide by the same actors, by the same individuals. And I wanted to present some examples very briefly over the next few minutes. So if we could maybe show the first slide. Can we show the first slide, please? Thank you. Well, I think many of you are familiar with the face that we have just seen. That is Khieu Samphan, who was the nominal head of state during the Khmer Rouge regime, who is actually convicted, and he is in prison for crimes against humanity, and definitely he's co-responsible for some of the most horrific crimes against humanity in the 20th century. And I was very much surprised when in a canteen of the Royal University of Phnom Penh a few years ago, I found freely distributed copies of his book in English, a book which in a way is a classic example of genocide denial or distortion, in which the author uses some arguments very typical of those who deny or distort the Holocaust in Europe. So first of all, he resorts to deflecting guilt, which is a very typical strategy as described by scholars such as Michael Shafir in the case of Holocaust denial and distortion. So first of all, he tries to shift the guilt to other individuals, such as Pol Pot, but also, and very importantly, he tries to shift the bulk of the guilt for the atrocities to another nation, in this case to the Vietnamese. So he is claiming that the worst crimes, the worst atrocities were not committed by Khmer Rouge. In fact, he claims they were not committed by Khmers at all, but the Vietnamese are responsible for it. And this kind of shifting of blame is definitely very characteristic of Holocaust deniers and distorters in Europe as well. Now, Khieu Samphan, I don't think he had anything to say about the Holocaust, but some of the other individuals I want to mention have done that too. And the next example is the lawyer of Khieu Samphan, Jacques Verge, who was a French lawyer, but his roots were in Thailand, and he defended in the course of his career many problematic individuals and criminals, as well as dictators, and that included Khmer Rouge leaders. But apart from defending Khmer Rouge leaders, he also defended Klaus Barbie, who was one of the most notorious Nazi criminals, who was arrested and sentenced for his role in exterminating French Jews he was eventually arrested and sentenced in the 1980s. And in the course of defending the Khmer Rouge leaders, as well as Nazis such as Klaus Barbie, Jacques Verge also resorted to certain discursive strategies that you can call genocide denial or trivialization or minimization. And of course, everybody has a right to legal defense. So this in itself is not problematic, but the arguments made in public, also in media, by Jacques Verge in both these cases, well, can be easily identified as genocide denial or genocide distortion. There are other cases that we can mention. Can we go to the next one? Okay. Jan Myrdal is a Swedish figure, a writer, an activist, who is the son of a very prominent Swedish and international sociologist. But Jan Myrdal is one of those people who share a clear antipathy against Jews and especially against Israel, as well as a certain fascination with the Khmer Rouge regime. And he died recently, but for many years he was involved in denying the facts, the reality of Khmer Rouge crimes in Cambodia, as well as promoting a sort of radical anti-Zionist version of Holocaust distortion, claiming that Israel is using the Holocaust for and exaggerating the Holocaust for its own benefit. The next example, please. Now, Israel Shamir, a very similar case in some ways. Paradoxically, he is of Russian Jewish origin, apparently. He has lived in several countries, including Israel and including Sweden. And he is one of the symbols of the contemporary anti-Semitic movement. Paradoxically, the phenomenon of so-called self-hating Jews is not a new phenomenon, of course. Again, accusing the Jewish people and Israel, the state of Israel, of exaggerating the Holocaust for its own benefit. And he also wrote some articles claiming that the crimes against humanity committed by the Khmer Rouge never took place. So he's definitely an example of a multi-denier, somebody who denies or minimizes genocide and human rights abuses, both during World War II and in Cambodia in the 1970s. The next slide, please. And I want to be very clear, and I want to stress that I don't want to call Noam Chomsky a genocide denier. This is not what I have to say here. Certainly, he is one of the one of the most significant intellectuals of our age. But we also have to say that some of the things that he said and wrote, especially in the late 70s, could be interpreted as minimization of the crimes of the Khmer Rouge. He partly retracted some of those statements, but his role at that time vis-a-vis the Cambodian genocide, well, is quite problematic. But also some of his statements vis-a-vis Holocaust denial have been problematic, including writing a preface to one of the infamous books denying the Holocaust by Robert Faurisson. Chomsky claimed he did it in the name of the freedom of speech, but he received a lot of criticism for his role in legitimizing some forms of Holocaust denial and distortion, as well as distortion of Cambodian genocide. And the next. Again, I would repeat once more, I am not saying that William Shawcross is a genocide denier, far from that. In fact, he wrote one very important book about Cambodia and the bombing of Cambodia by US forces in the early 70s. I think many of us have this book on our shelves. But in the next years, in the 1980s, he somewhat changed his mind, and some of his writings actually and statements actually justified the bombing of Cambodia, in which I would like to remind up to 500,000 innocent people died. But also importantly, he came to claim that the supposed crimes of the Vietnamese in Cambodia were just as bad or even worse as the crimes of the Khmer Rouge. And this, well, first of all, is factually incorrect, but I think it is also morally unacceptable because it amounts to a form of historical distortion and distortion of the facts and the scale of the crimes of Khmer Rouge. So just very briefly, I wanted to illustrate that some of the discursive strategies of Holocaust deniers are similar to strategies of denial and distortion of Cambodian genocide, and in some cases the denial or distortion is even promoted by the same actors, the same individuals. They can be called multi-deniers. So we are going to publish this research, and more examples will be included with more facts and quotations. But this is what I wanted to present for today, and I think I ran out of my time, so I shall stop now. I will be grateful for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presenting, Professor. As a Cambodian and a moderator, I get inspiring and through your information, and we will have the more questions later on at the end of this session. So for the second speaker, I would like to invite Ms. Sayana Ser. We're talking about the process of dealing with the past in Cambodia in the context of genocide, distortion, especially during the Khmer Rouge, the conflict, the dealing with the past, especially regarding to the minority group in Cambodia, Chang. So Ms. Sayana, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Visal. I have a little bit of a technical problem with the virtual background. So can you turn on the video or no, cannot? I cannot turn on the video. So
okay.
Is it okay?
So Natalia, this is something where you also willing to help us?
So I can continue. I will start with the slide presentation here. Thank you again, Visal. I will start with the slide. Can you see the slide or I need to share?
Oh, yes, we can see right now. Thank you.
Yes, so I will start with as a Cambodian who was born just like a few 1 year after the Khmer Rouge fall and after the liberation, but almost 40 years now, no, more than 40 years, and I've been staying in Cambodia and also studying in dealing with what has happened in the country and how the people, also the older generation, has dealt with all this traumatized and the dark history in of the country. And with the start of this, I would like to share first the background of how Cambodian deal in general dealing with the past and from the work of the government and also the civil society and also from the public. And with that, I also have similar to what Professor Rafal have just shared about the tribunal, about the denial or distortion about genocide in Cambodia. And first, I'd like to give the background how the Cambodian has started. Like at first, as we all know that the Khmer Rouge have fallen during the 1979 in January. And at the time, like 7 or 8 months after the fall of the regime, the new government have established a tribunal. It's called a People Revolution Tribunal, who tried at the time of 2 leaders of the regime, is the Pol Pot and Ieng Sary in 1979. And it was a trial in absentia. That means the two criminal was not there, but they were sentenced to life sentence and to death, but they were not there, not present in the court. And after that, Ieng Sary was get a royal pardon, royal amnesty from the king in order to consider about the defection integration at the time in 1996, in order to consider for the peace in the country, like integration and everything to make peace for the country at the time. But then the government has also established the Day of Remembrance on May 20 as a National Day of Remembrance, but at that time it also called a Day of Anger. And from the government also, they have also preserved the Tu Slai in Chiang Ai. Tu Slai was the most, not how to say, the biggest prison that many people were brought to Tu Slai and were killed there. And after there were no ground left for the burial of the victim, they were transferred to Chiang Ai, the mass grave, the killing field there. And so Tu Slai in Chiang Ai is also the evident represent of the crime committed during the Khmer Rouge. And then after that, in 2006, there's a tribunal, or we call the hybrid court, between the United Nations and the National Cambodian government, have been established in 2006 to have this ECC. So right here I put like 2003, but it's 2006. And here I like to point about the kind of distortion that the public disagree. Although the tribunal, the defense, like Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sary, and Ieng Thirat, in the case 002 or case 001, they have a defense lawyer, defense counsel team for them. But among these, there are some there's a lawyer who defense lawyer who taking like very very weird or strange behavior, kind of not of course they are the defense, so it's about the denial and about the helping the defense. But in here, like the lawyer Victor Coupe, and also Anta Kesi. I'm not sure I pronounce the names right correctly, but they asked the court that the defense, Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan was not guilty of the genocide. But in fact, there are Tua Slai and Chiang Ai, and also there are all these evidence, the victim and testimony for showing as a proof already, but they still ask the court about how they are not enough evidence. The defendants are not guilty of the genocide. And also that also make the public feel like it's not fair, and the victim, also the survivor of the country, feel the question about the tribunal, that they are not really satisfied, or not really not satisfied with the tribunal, but with the defense counsel, like how can people defend such a criminal? Yes, next slide, please. That was the initiative from the government, and also this there are many efforts that from the civil society, from the organization and institute. Like as we all know, since 1979, and Cambodian just raised from this year zero, and so there are many efforts, and many are left from the genocide are women and orphans. There are also the trial about the genocide on the Cha Muslim community, but not many like the government or the tribunal and many other efforts really put the effort on that, because just after the liberation, the country was starting from year zero. They are striving to working on the economic and on the recovery on the economy, and also the society, to building the infrastructure and other things. And the government at the time was kind of using this genocide education or history education on the Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge regime. It's more in a political charge, and also like in for propaganda. And from 1993 to 1996 and 1998, because of the integration, the defection from the Khmer Rouge guerrilla who were at in the border of Cambodia and Thai border, because of this integration, the school textbook and everything was very short. It's not really educated. It's not in the whole history in the class of the junior and senior high school. And so the government have the history textbook in just part of it, and it's like I said before, it's not the whole context into the perspective of the regime of the crime that happened during the Khmer Rouge. And then in 2002, there was no new material or new text about the regime was teaching in the school, in high school and senior high school also. And so because of this, the civil society play a very important role, because although people themselves, the Cambodian themselves, they were suffering all this traumatized event. Some claim that they don't want to talk, they don't want to remind, because it's really painful for them. But in psychology, like if you share, and if you share, it can release the pain to reconcile the past. And also, if you don't talk, how can the younger generation believe? Like for example, in the everyday, people, they said they don't want to talk, but actually they have some expression or have some part of the story that talk about it. And so the children, younger generation especially, they would think that it's a folklore, it's a fairy tale that just used to the parent or the older generation use it to scare them. But that's when the civil society, the organization and other play the role to educate, to create a program to bring this education and to reach out to those people, to from the grassroots, from the survivor, and also to especially the younger generation to understand, to know, and what is the truth. And at that time, from 2003 to 2006, until the tribunal established, there were a lot of activity, a lot of programs that have been tremendously working on the outreach and education. That is a very good period of education, but also there are some distortion and denial. But before I go to that, I would like to share here about the Anne Frank Diary and also the JAM Oral History Project. That was the effort from the civil society. As I mentioned before, like Cambodia, they don't want to talk about the past because it's painful or because they're busy with the recovery from the economy infrastructure to build a country. And so like Documentation Center of Cambodia at the time has have this idea, the director have bring the Anne Frank Diary, because Cambodians also didn't believe themselves that their own people like want to destroy or to kill their own people. It's just like Khieu Samphan and Nuon Chea have raised to transfer the guilt to the other, like to the Vietnamese or Cham Muslim Cham people in Cambodia. And also that's why they introduced that Anne Frank Diary as a way to, as a start, the beginning to show that how to make the people of Cambodia who are the resilient. Actually, they're very resilient to the event, and they try to build a country also with the bare hand, and use this diary as a way of introducing and to help to move and carry on with the lie. Also in the Cham Muslim community, there were oral history project, there were cultural preservation, there were a collection of outreach programs, story collection from the Muslim community, and as well as from the victim and survivor of the Khmer Rouge, that has been documenting and been a lot of collecting from during the 2000s, 2003, 2006, and until now. But all this effort have been tremendously needed during that time, during the tribunal has established it before and after that. And there are also other work that many other civil society have done, like Youth for Peace and Peace Institute of Cambodia, Bophana Center, and also Kadai Karana and YRDP. There are a lot of work that are working on this. But today, there are still people who, and younger generation who is still not really been access to it, or not really aware of the essence or the context of the genocide or the Holocaust or the Khmer Rouge, because like the Holocaust have been introduced in Cambodia history, as I mean in the history textbook as well, but as a comparison and as just a small part, like in general, but not about the Holocaust, but about World War II, about the Hitler and Nazi, like kill Jewish people, but there's no detail context or aspect into this. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is another kind of political, like politicians have been used it as uses this way. I don't think it's the correct way. It's not the right way for politicians to use the what's the evidence. what's the evidence of the, sorry.
No worry, please go ahead. And for reminding, Sayana, you have a few minutes to finish your presenting.
Okay,
So sorry,
thank you.
time is running. Thank you
So
much.
just next slide, please. I'd like to show this, the politician, the forum opposite party have been claimed that those line was not, those line prison was not from the Khmer Rouge, but it's a Vietnamese set up as a stage. Could you show the picture, the next slide? Can. Oh, there's no. Yeah. So that was the first one was Kum Sukha, who claimed that the prison was not by the Khmer Rouge, but it was set up by the Vietnamese government at the time in 1979. But then there are thousands of people, like survivors, and even the prisoner, former prisoner there, like Chum Mai, have been protest against him. And also like this one, is this about the awareness about the ignorance, like the people here. Here's the grave of Pol Pot in An Long Weng. It was put in the TripAdvisor as a tourist site, and of course it should be educated as a tourist as well. And but here the people, the tourists and local people, even from they plan to attract the people from Thailand, Thai people, because it's in the border, on the border of Cambodian Thai in Odam Chai province. So the Pol Pot's grave, he died in 1998. People come here to ask for luck, like a lottery number to get a job promotion. Yeah, and even to ask for getting a beautiful wife, a beautiful bride, like that. And this is kind of like here also have children who come to give incense, like the offering to the grave. And this is like Professor Van Dyke speak yesterday, is the critical discourse analysis, like who are they, who create this. We need to think about the what behind this, the background of these people. Do they know why? Do they know who Pol Pot is? But why still they are common offering for asking for luck, for the lucky lottery number, something like all this thing. And even tourists also come here to asking for luck as well. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the about the Kum Sukha that he claimed in June about the two-slide prison. Yes. Okay, just next slide, please. And so that's just some of my point that I'd like to raise about in just a general perspective about Cambodia, how Cambodia did it in the past. There are so many issues like Cambodian have faced from even like from the French colonial, from the Lone North, from all the Civil War. So many states, so many events that happened in the dark history. And so during the 2000, during the tribunal established, the ECC, have been a lot of NGO and civil society have been working on it. Also, the government have accepting the textbook on history of democratic Cambodia, but it is as a supplementary to the school, high school, and also in senior high school. But I think personally, education about the Holocaust and the genocide need to be put in the school history textbook, also curriculum as a must, I think, not just as a supplement. And also the work of NGO and civil organization is very important to help to bring the access, to help to reach out to people who have limited access, just like people in the remote area in and also in survivor who are the Khmer Rouge cadre or the former Khmer Rouge soldier, not only just the victim. So it's very important to educate people, and also what's the discourse and the background behind of the education, why we educate about the history of the genocide and the Holocaust. Yes, and the passage of time that many people forget and all this, so need to keep to continue to educate, not just for the time or for the high prime time or for the golden time. It needs to be remind constantly, and also need to be taught at school as a compulsory, as a mandate, not as a supplement. Thank you. That's just what I like to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sayana. Thank you for your information and the recommendation that you put on your presenting. For the audience, for our participants, if you have any questions or any clarification that you want from our panelists, please drop your question on the chat box below. So because we run out of time right now, I would like to invite our third speakers, Mr. Sopheap. Mr. Sopheap, he is Executive Director at the Bophana Audiovisual Resource Center in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And today he will be presenting about how the Bophana Center work against the deny and distortion of the Khmer Rouge authority. Mr. Sopheap, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bong Visal. Thank you, and I would like to thank everyone for staying in the discussions in this event, and thank Neva again for having created this very special event, and that I am honored and with my great pleasure to be here tonight. And I think our previous speaker has already covered a lot about the atrocity committed under the Khmer Rouge, and everyone here have gotten a lot of context about this already. So I am not going to talk more about that, but I will go straight to the activities that Bophana centers, like the other organization and Cambodian government, have done to educate and to raise public awareness about the Khmer Rouge history, especially the denial of the atrocity. Before I go to that point, I just want to give you a little bit context of Bophana Center. Okay. So Bophana Center was established by Cambodian filmmaker Retipan, who was the Khmer Rouge survivor, and he escaped. He left Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge through the refugee camps. He went to France, and over there, as one of the Khmer Rouge survivors and the one with traumas, and it was very hard for him to speak about what was happening in the country. So he took filmmaking as an approach to tell the story of what was happening to Cambodian people, to his family, and to himself. So Reti decided to become filmmakers, and then he made many films about that. But when he came to Cambodia in 1989 to make his first film, Saitu, in Cambodian refugee camp, he understood a lot about the loss of the memory from the Khmer Rouge, because many people kills. And he used to say to me that you should remember that one people has one memory. This just a small thing. We don't count many stories that one people have known, have learned, but we just say one people, one memory. What about a million people? So a million stories have been destroyed. That is why Reti create a place where memory can be stored, can be collected, can be presented to the public. That's why he established Bophana Center. So when he established the centers, so the center became a non-profit organization committed to reviving the memory of Cambodia and fostering Cambodian culture through art and multimedia. This memory and culture have been, as you know, almost been erased by 3 decades of war and genocide. So aiming to reconstruct this memory of Cambodia under the term that our founders say, save and resuscitate today, yesterday and today memory, Bophana Center collect, safeguard audiovisual archive for Cambodia, including films, photography, and sound archive from around the world, and provide public access to those audiovisual heritage, and train young Cambodians, people in filmmaking to facilitate freedom and artistic expression, and also for archiving their country. And he believed that this effort will have Cambodians gradually restore this priceless heritage and enable them to understand their past and build their present and invent their future. So when the center was created, 3 main activity, 3 main objectives were made, you know, as you can see, 1, 2, 3 here, that I don't need to specify. And I totally agree with previous speakers, and also Dr. Leo Ryman, who have said that to deal with the denial or the distortion of the atrocity of the Khmer Rouge history, we need keyword education. So education is very, very important, that we need to continue doing that. So Bophana Center has played roles in educations of this Khmer Rouge, of this atrocity. So tonight I will bring only 4 main activities that Bophana Center have been doing in contribution to the fight against the denial of the Khmer Rouge atrocity. So one of which is the creation of the multimedia applications called App Learning on the Khmer Rouge History. This is very fantastic projects that have been that were funded by European Union and Ray Foundation, with a lot of collaboration from many people, as you can see in our background here in our slide. We start to think that what activity should be most accessible to youth today, because the history of the Khmer Rouge is not really accessible to everyone. Then we understood that Cambodia is is a country with young populations, 60 or 65% are young people. And we understood that internet connection in the country is also accessible. A number of young people own smart device, at least one smart device. And we thought that this should be a very interesting thing to create some tool that they can use their smartphones to learn the history. So that we create the apps. And this application was, when we start to create, we also think about what information should be given and how accurate the information should be. Very difficult to make decisions. So that we started to form the scientific committee, or perhaps in academia you call editors or something like that. But we call here scientific committee, containing number of people, experts who work in the area of dealing with the Khmer Rouge history or dealing with the Holocaust. I think that one of them is with us tonight. Perhaps you may know her, Dr. Helen Jarvis, and the other 7 scientific committee who form to make sure that the history is at least good enough for young Cambodian people. And then we understood that many of the work on the Khmer Rouge history have been written by non-Cambodians, and we wanted to test whether this can be written by young Cambodian scholar or not. Thanks to some people who really, some Cambodian scholar who really like to contribute. We have one of them here tonight with us, Mr. Cao Duong, who is a Cambodian historian. And he started to like our project and he agreed to be one of the writers. Then we started to prepare and we started to write history. And the history, the written history is to submit to all our scientific committee to make sure that thing is good enough. So until today, we have learned that the app have been downloaded by more than 66,000 users already from App Store and Play Store. So I would like to invite you, if you want to learn about the past, the past of the Khmer Rouge, the Khmer Rouge history, I invite you to download the app through our App Store and Play Store, just using the keyword Khmer Rouge history, and you will see the logo below, like, you know, KR that stand for Khmer Rouge. And when the app was created, we are, you know, I would say a little bit, because to the first one, this app aimed to, you know, educate youth about the Khmer Rouge history by using something multimedia innovative and raise awareness about justice, human rights, peace, and also most important is also fostering intergenerational dialogue. Very important. Like Sayana refers initially that some people do not want to talk because it's about painful story. But when they start to talk about it, the traumas, you know, the painful story is released and healed step by step. So we understood that, and that we want to encourage the intergenerational dialogue. And after the creation of the apps, we launched 2 more activities to make sure that this app is really reachable to everyone. So we started to work with Ministry of Education by inviting history teachers to learn how to use app as a teaching tool, supplementary teaching tool. As you can see in the image, they are history teachers from various high schools throughout Cambodia to learn with our writer how to use this app as the teaching tool. And throughout this activity, we have trained around 400 history teachers to use the apps. And after training the teachers, we continue to teach this history at high school. Thanks to the support of Ministry of Education, we are able to offer 2-hour sessions to teach the Khmer Rouge history, and also to teach these young people how to use this application as a learning tool. So we have reached out to 66,000 students of 263 high school. But it's not big number because, you know, young people still grow up, and if we are not continuing, if civil society, government is not making the effort to continue education of this, the young people will not be able to remember or to know what was happening. Like Sayana say in her slide, that young people came to pray for Pol Pot for luck to get the lottery numbers. That's something that we should be aware of.
Mr. Sopheap, I'm sorry for distractions, but you have 1 minute to wrap up about your presenting, because we want to give some time for our audience to ask the questions and discussions. I apologize for that.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you. So I will try my best. And here's just only some of the information, and you can go to see our app there. And the other activities which is important, we call act of memory. This act of memory aim to keep memory of the Khmer Rouge alive by creating a space for dialogue between the Khmer Rouge survivor and their children. So the dialogue is video recorded for educational activity, you know, as a source for learning. Parent or grandparent were able to share the memory to their children. Yes, this is one of example, and many dialogue have been recorded and available on our app on Khmer Rouge history. So please go and see, and also accessible on our website, as you can see on the slides. And the other activity, very important, is that our mobile cinema. Our mobile cinema, I think that is a very, very powerful tool as we bring films on the Khmer Rouge, dealing with the Khmer Rouge, to screen for the public and followed by discussions with the Khmer Rouge survivor or with the expert. In this slide, you see our mobile cinema in partnership with Public Affairs of the Khmer Rouge Tribunal. We brought films to the people, to the young people, for them to watch at night, and then followed by the discussions. And in this image, we also screen films for students at university and high school. One example is First They Killed My Father, and you see great number of people, and they really like to learn the history from, some saying easy, some tool which give them a very easy access. And the activity that we have done, the same, that we bring the film to people in the countryside to talk about this. And the other important thing is film productions. There's Dr. Leo Raymond mentioned that film is one of the very powerful mediums. So we are working to document and make them into film that can be shareable, can be accessible for everyone. And I would like to invite everyone to download our app to watch all the films in the app. As I would like to say, in this app there are 38 documentary films on the Khmer Rouge history and 52 testimony of the Khmer Rouge survivors, and many other fiction films dealing with the Khmer Rouge history. So it become a very, very educational tool for young people. And yeah, thank you so much. And I apologize for taking time. Thank you, and I would welcome any questions.
Thank you so much for Mr. Sopheap for your presentings about how Bophana Center would actually contribute to help Cambodia dealing with the past. So right now, there's one important question. It seems like in Cambodia, there's so many people start discussing about what is happening from the past. The old people, the young generation people, I believe that people actually start to discussing what is happening. But the thing is, there's the history norm, there's a taboo, there's the restriction where people does not feel safe when they speak it out. For example, the older people, they don't want to share the sad memory to the young, and the young people don't want to ask from the older people because they worry that their grandparents or their father or their mother will have a traumatized about how they talk about their life experience. And there's so many people actually, including myself as a Cambodian and my friend from my experience in Cambodia, start discussing about this, but in a secretly way. It's not freely, and people are confused about what the difference between genocide. Not talking about genocide in Asia and the genocide in Europe. What does the ethnic cleansing mean? What does the genocide mean? For example, when we talk about the genocide in Europe, let's say it's about the genocide in Nazi, which is mean it was clearing that the German, the Nazi was killing the Jews. But in Cambodia, everybody dies. This includes the Vietnam inside Cambodia, the Cham, the Cambodian itself, and there's no allow any religious practicing what is happening in Cambodia, including the Buddhists. So this is something which we're not clear about. That we are talking about the result of the past, but not many people are start talking about the root cause of the conflict. What is the responsibility of the governments? And in which level, actually, we start to talk dealing with the past. So I heard the very important one question from our audience, Luang Kao. She or he was asking that why we are talking about the genocide denied. The term genocide in Cambodia context is not clearly defined yet, as it has been criticized. The common understanding of the term is somehow again the legal framework of ECC, which limited the term genocide only against the Cham and the Vietnamese. For this reason, I would like to hear from our speaker to what define of the term genocide that you refer to the genocide denied in Cambodia. So Professor Rafal and Mr. Sopheap and Sanya, I think we start with Professor Rafal.
Thank you. I think it is an important question, and I appreciate it. Well, of course, we need to be aware of different interpretations of the term. There is a legal interpretation, and there is another interpretation which we can describe as sociological. And when I talked about genocide, denial, or distortion in the case of Cambodia, I am referring to this broader understanding of the term genocide. So the legal understanding that is mostly related with the United Nations Convention on Genocide, which is linked with the definition of Rafal Lemkin, the Polish Jewish lawyer who promoted the term in the context of the Holocaust and World War II. But of course, it focuses very much on in the Cambodian case on the plight of the ethnic minorities, the Cham and the Vietnamese, and I think in a way it is understandable, but it is a rather narrow understanding of the question of genocide. So I think we could just park the term genocide in the legal context, and if we want to be very precise in terms of legal terminology, we could simply talk about denial or distortion of crimes against humanity or crimes of Khmer Rouge. But I'm sure Helen Jarvis has something to say about this topic, on which she, of course, is the most competent person. So I don't know, Helen, would you like to comment on this interesting issue just now?
Thank you, Rafal. Indeed, first of all, thank you to everybody for the evening, I think so far, and last night as well. Very interesting discussion. And we'll continue. I think it's, I understand where you're coming from, Rafal, when you're making a distinction between the legal term and the sociological use of the term. And in fact, that's what we used in our book when I wrote the book together with Tom Forthrop, a book called Getting Away with Genocide, with a question mark, Elusive Justice and the Khmer Rouge Tribunal. And we contrasted the legal and the sociological. That was in 2004. But my thinking actually has developed beyond that in a new direction, thanks largely to the work being done by colleagues, especially in Argentina. And Professor Daniel Firestein is the prominent discussant in this new approach, where they have actually looked at not to suggest that there's a difference, but that the actual legal definition, the UN definition itself, can be used, can be applied in a broader way than has been the case. And I think this is an extraordinarily interesting development. What has come up is looking at what we mean by destruction of the national group. And they're not thinking of the nation as ethnic minority. We already have religious, ethnic, and racial minorities, but the national group as a whole being destroyed in whole or in part. And this has been applied in the courts in Argentina. I was talking to Daniel this morning, and he was telling me that there have been more than 200 cases in Argentina dealing with genocide, dealing with prosecutions from that time, from the time of the military dictatorships. And of these, some 25% of the courts have ruled that it was genocide. And this is using the Genocide Convention. So I think we don't always have to counterpose legal and sociological. Let us use the tools we have, the Genocide Convention, but apply it more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. And right now, we would like to invite Mr. Sopheap if you have any contribution in this regard.
Thank you so much. I think that Dr. Helen Jarvis and Professor Rafal have clearly spoken and respond to Doong's question already. And actually, we have been discussing a lot too among our peers about that. So I think that it's good to hear from Dr. Helen Jarvis and Rafal about that. I have no further comment on that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sopheap. And Ms. Sayana, do you have any contribution in this question?
Yeah, thank you. I was disconnected. The connection is very poor, but I catch up at the beginning with Professor Rafal and Dr. Jarvis. It's very good in analyzing. Having this answering to Kai Doong. And I'd like to share just from a general view from my perspective, like Dr. Rafal have said before, is have a different definition of genocide. But for Cambodian genocide, we refer to the Cambodian in general also. That is from the public. Just like justice means different to different people, like in legal and in public perspective, Cambodian people's idea. And so just like the genocide in the ECC, in the tribunal, we use the term in the legal, like from the UN, from the definition, from the convention. That's the term of genocide was crime committed with intent, with intention, with the destroy of a national or racial religious group. And for Cambodian genocide, I think is the committed by the Khmer Rouge to the Cambodian people. This is for our in general idea, but for the tribunal is also using a different definition from the Cambodian perspective in general, from the public. It's just like, again, like the justice, how the justice mean in different way of the people. So in your question here, I think what we are talking and discuss here is about the genocide in general, and also genocide, again, the Cham and again, the Vietnamese, and also again, the Cambodian, because it's like the monk was, this robe was banned from wearing the robe, and also the pagoda had been transferred into a prison security center. So that's what I like to mean here in general, and I hope to answer your question as addition to Dr. Jarvis and Dr. Pankowski. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bong Sayana. And now, Dr. Helen, we already ran out of time. Now we have 5 more minutes to give a floor on you for your contribution.
Thank you. If I may, just 1 minute, I think is all I need, which is just to say that I would suggest that people have a look at the opinion by Judge U Ottara, a Cambodian judge who wrote a separate opinion on the question of genocide. And this is interesting because the prosecutors in the ECCC decided that they would only charge genocide against the Cham and the Vietnamese. They did not want to charge genocide for the Khmer people. And Judge Ottara wrote a very interesting opinion where he said that it was a pity that they did not charge it because it could have been a good discussion for the judges to have. And maybe they would have taken a more broader approach, as I suggested, even using the existing Genocide Convention. So just that final word, sorry, I forgot to say that before. I would direct everybody to read the second opinion of Judge Odera in the trial chamber in case 02002. Thanks very much for giving me a little more time.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Helens. It is important that we keep speaking and raising and addressing how we understand about the genocide and start to talking what is happening in our society. This is it's hard for the generation to differentiate between the genocide in when we give like a general definition, because that talking about the case in Cambodia that people speak one language and then there is no the case where one religion allowed to practice, another religion not allowed to practice, because the genocide term in Cambodia is so far different from the Europe, from my own perspective, or talking about Myanmar itself. So thank you so much for all your contribution. And now I think we ran out of time, and I would like to give the floor to Natalie to continue the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Visal, for your wonderful moderation and for all speakers and contributors. And I believe this is a very huge discussion, and we will continue it after the break. And now we will have 10 minutes break. And my colleague Samantha will have a documentary about the ghettos. So you can stay with us for 10 minutes, or you can go to have kind of a brief short break. So, and we will meet in 10 minutes, and our keynote speaker will be Ben Kernan, and we will also have a Dr. Teresa Delangis from American University from Phnom Penh as a commentator, and Rafal Pankowski will be a moderator, and when we will have discussion after the keynote speech of Professor Ben Kernan, who is a professor of International Anti-Area Studies and director of Genocide Studies program at Yale University, and also Cambodia program. So let's meet in 10 minutes. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. So Samantha, you can put video. Thank you.